Alright, so here's a demo for my new plugin called Disco Tools for the Godot game engine. This plugin is aimed at helping developers make disco-likes, so games in the style of Disco Elysium, and it's sort of just trying to manage a lot of the things that you have to do, such as state and randomness, so that you can focus more on narrative, which is a very heavy element of disco-likes. Just the sheer amount of writing you have to do. Anyway, so the plugin provides this auto load right here. You can find it under add-ons, Disco Tools, auto loads, and discotools.tscn. It should, when you import the project, be available in globals by default when you enable the plugin. Basically, the role handler on the state value of Disco Tools, you can check it out here. It's basically just a simple scene, and it provides some simple UI and logic handling for Disco Tools, where essentially this is just the default handler, so you can get different handlers as well. You can make your own. I'm going to add more to the main repo as time goes on, but this is the default. And essentially you have a simple roll check function that basically does the process for rolling and sort of pauses the dialogue and animates in, presents the roll result to the user. Then you also have a get roll odds function that provides the user with a preview of what the check looks like. So if we go ahead and play the game, this is a test scene that I've made, and here's the check. So, ooh, rock, should I jump over it? And you can see here that it's previewing a 93% chance of success, and then the roll pops up. You can check the modifiers, and it tells you exactly how many dice you have in your dice pool, and tells you the result of the roll. And now, see, we have a failure here. So we can go ahead and look at what this looks like in dialogue here. So this is that chain of events right here. And I would recommend looking at it just real quick. So you have a rock, and now you're just calling, hey, I want to get the roll odds of this check, and then present that to the user. So that's the double curlies, and then do the roll. So this is actually doing the roll, so it calls that roll check method over here for this specific check from the auto load. So we're referencing the disco auto load here. So instead of saying disco.rollPlayer, it just says rollPlayer because we imported at the top, and then uses the automatically written roll result value to determine the branching from there. And so it's as simple as these two functions here and using roll result to branch based on the outcome. There are also dev tools that the plugin includes that force the outcome of the roll one way or the other, so that you can force all successes or all failures, or turn it off if you don't want forcing. I'm hoping to add more dev tools as time goes on as well, but you just have this one at the moment, which also gives you a UI for toggling it on and off as you need to. So it's literally just as simple as a drop-down menu in the top left corner that drops down for force off, force success, and force failure. So I'll just expand that a little bit here. Cool. So that's what we're looking like here. So that's the UI. We're going to move on from the roll handler to more state things. So the roll handler does the randomness, but another thing that Disco Tools does is state handling. So if we look up at the top, we're actually checking, so bool event status, that's a function on the auto load. So if we go up here and we open up the auto load from here, you can check it out here, and we can find the bool event status function. So bool event status here, and basically all it's doing, you can ignore this for now, is just checking if that event string that you're feeding in is equal to status, which by default is just a success. So basically you're just saying, hey, is this specific event a success? So if we go over to the event list over here and we open up the event, we can find excited, and it is in fact a success. So now if we play the scene, we can look, and there it is. Excited is success. So we can see that it's branching correctly. If we decide to go over here and set it to failure, for example, we can rerun, and observe the changes. So excited is not success, as you can see. So cool. So we're just branching based on an event, and an event is just something that happens, the basic unit of like something happening in your game. So something you want to keep track of for later, referring back to it. You can add an event. So an event would be, so I have here excited. An event can have a bunch of different statuses, so you can have a not offered event, so that means it's still coming, you haven't encountered the event yet. A success would be it happened, if it's just a happened or it didn't happen thing. Or if it's been failed somehow, you can also toggle it to failure. And also, there's a status string, so you can even get a little bit more esoteric in your own implementation here by implementing your own status. And now what this does is test is the status string, and it automatically sets status to other to signify that the status string is set and is being used. So now if we can actually reference the status string in the bool event status function over here, so you can actually feed in a status string here, and if it's set, if it's not empty as it is set by default, then it'll check against the status string rather than the status. Okay, cool. Moving on from there, we can go down to the missions. Now missions are just a set of provided events. So just like it's just literally just an array of events, and you can set your events. So here we'll have thing 1, and we'll call the mission things. So we have thing 1, we'll say it's not offered, and then we'll have thing 2, and it's also not offered. Cool. So the neat thing with missions is they're a little bit more automated than the events. So we can say we have thing 1, we have thing 2. We can say the status is not offered right now. Say you succeed on thing 1, and then eventually succeed on thing 2. You can see the plugin automatically updates the status of the mission itself to success when both mandatory events have been completed. Another thing that you should note about missions is that the events that they contain within them are separate from the events that you just have in the base event list. So you can look here, you have your base event, and you can notice that there's an extra variable here called optional. It's just a Boolean, and you can toggle it on and off. It's not present in the event list. So if you go back here and set this back to not offered, and set all these back to not offered, we can actually toggle this optional. So now when I say success, it just sets success without caring about what this is set as. So this could be failed for all that we care. And if this is set to success, it'll set to success and just ignore this, since it's an optional event. So it's not necessary to the, I guess, canon of the mission that it succeeds or fails. This one is not optional and thus matters. Cool. So that's missions, and they're a little bit more esoteric and a little bit more implementation specific than just an event. But since missions are a big part of Disco Elysium itself, I figured I would just go ahead and implement them in the plugin. Cool. Moving on, we also have entities. So an entity is just something you can talk to, I would say. Something that will have a check. So this is most likely a person, but in Disco Elysium, you talk to walls, you talk to mail cabinets, you can talk to, in my Disco-like, I implemented a bathroom that you could talk to. So I've expanded the term to encompass pretty much anything that you can generally interact with and have dialogue with and or have checks with. So what an entity does, so we'll call this one Bob. Bob has a related piece of dialogue, and we'll call it, we'll feed that one in. It has an image. We don't think we have images in this project, but related image, so that could be used as a character portrait in the balloon, which is hopefully coming soon in a future version of Disco Tools, but the API supports it right now. Regardless, so you can still feed that image in, and hopefully we'll put it in a character portrait later. and most importantly, a entity is going to have an array of checks. So a check is just the basic unit of like random event. So that thing we rolled earlier was a check. Neato. So we'll get to that specifically later on, but each NPC is going to have its own collection of checks. But since they're on the Disco Tools auto load, they can be referenced from anywhere, from any script, and from any other piece of dialogue. So crucially, you just have to know what NPC they're on, and you can reference any check, which is very helpful. Because it's a lot of Disco Elysium is very interconnected between dialogue trees, and so I wanted to make Disco Tools as interoperable as possible. If we look at this check, we can say, oh, I want to say convince of something. So we'll say convince, and you can set it as one shot. You can set the difficulty to say 2, and you can add modifiers. So like say the default modifier, we'll say charisma, and we'll give you 2 and say it's enabled. So crucially, you can enable in default the bonus. So basically, if you want to make the bonus contingent on you having done something in the first place, you can disable the bonus by default and then enable it later on by name, which is very helpful. Now, I should note that bonuses, mods, and all of this is very system specific. So what Disco Tools has done is it's actually split up the systems off and made it more interoperable and basically customizable. So if you want to make your own system, what you can do is you can actually extend the base classes provided by Disco Tools here. So something like check resource, this is just a base class that you can extend yourself, and you basically just need to copy the default implementation, which is kept in systems default, and you should be good to go. You need all of this except for the modifier to have your own system. There's some stuff in the documentation if you want to implement that, but regardless, yeah, it's very customizable. So this system specifically is for the game that got me to make Disco Tools in the first place, so I just decided to port it over one-to-one, but you can make your own system if you so wish. Cool. Now, moving on from the entities, we can look at the player check list. So essentially, entities are just each individual little guy. The player checks are going to be player specific, so just sort of like an internal, like your own checks that aren't really necessarily tied to any specific entity, are stored separately, just for organization's sake. So essentially, you have a default check. So here. And this is the check that we rolled earlier, jump over rock. You can see it's referenced over here. And it's set to a difficulty of 2. We have modifiers. There's one called bounce. It gives you +2, and it's enabled. So if you rerun it, and you can actually check, and you can see that bounce is reflected in the roll. So we go here, and you can see bounce +2. So bounce +2. See? Enabled. And that's basically it. One thing of note is that the way that the plugin handles data types and organization is that it basically takes the array. So let's look at the events here. We can actually see events is an array, event list is an array, and we provide 2 objects, each with a name. This is important because this name actually gets grabbed and gets used as a key into a dictionary where the event itself is placed. So essentially, the event list is also backed by a dictionary. It's recommended that you use the dictionary to reference events so that you can just easily access them via the simple syntax. Moving on, you can also do other neat things such as save and load. So this is implemented in 0.3.0, and you can actually so there's 2 types of load and save. You can check inside Disco Tools here, but you actually have 2 different states. So you have your save path and your init path. Save path is just whenever you save your state, it automatically saves it to save path unless you specify your own path to save it in, so you can have multiple save files if you so wish. Save path is just a default that gets overwritten every time you save. And then load save loads from save path by default, but again, you can load from anywhere. On ready, it automatically saves your state. So initially, the way you have it set it up in editor, when you press run, it automatically saves it to init path. And so whenever you call reset state, it just loads the initial state of the plugin. So essentially, all of this setting here, I could change it a bunch in game, but if I want to say start a new game, you can press reset state, and it'll reset it to the default, which is a helpful mechanic. That's all I generally want to say about Disco Tools. Thanks for watching, and patches are welcome. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.